Good evening and welcome to Crawley Borough Council's Overview and Scrutiny Commission for the meeting of the 2nd of February 2026. I am Councillor Justin Russell, Chair of the Overview and Scrutiny Commission. There are no scheduled fire drills tonight, so in the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the main spiral staircase and through the main reception doors. Once outside, please turn left and make your way to the fire assembly point located beyond the multi-storey car park on Exchange Road. If you're unable to use the stairs, please wait until wait in the council chamber and you'll be guided by a member of staff to the evacuation lift. This meeting has been live streamed via the council's YouTube channel. Please note that there is a no comments function available as part of this webcasting. The council is a data controller and will retain the data collected during this webcast. This will be done so in accordance with the council's published data retention policy. We don't have any members of the public in the public gallery, so I'll move on. Councillors are reminded to take note of what is displayed on the screens in the room, as this shows is what is being recorded and webcast. Cameras are currently set to capture you in seated position, so please remain seated when speaking. You can request to speak as usual in committees by raising your hand, and I will endeavour to make sure everybody is seen in order. To speak by pressing the button with the face on it, and the microphone will go green when you are live. We have a very busy meeting tonight, so I would remind councillors obviously to be succinct with points and questions. So we'll now commence with apologies for absence. Have we any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Chair. We've received apologies from Councillor Hellier and Councillor Imtiaz Khan. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member, disclosure of interest and whipping declarations. Does any member have any disclosures of interest or whipping declarations? Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Chair. I declare a personal interest on item 6, Crawley Growth Programme refresh, as a member of West Sussex County Council and a contributor to the programme briefings.
Are there any other declarations of interest? Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Chairman. Declare personal non-prejudiced interest as a member of West Sussex County Council.
Thank you. Minutes. Now we come to the minutes of the last meeting held on the 12th of January, which do contain exempt items. Does the Commission agree that the minutes are an accurate record of the meeting? Agreed? Okay, thank you. No public question time. So, moving on. So, now on to the substantive business of the evening. We will start with the Housing Revenue Account Portfolio Rents Report from Councillor Irvine and Cabinet Member for Housing and Amanda Kendall, Head of Crawley Homes. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll do my best to introduce this, and no doubt Amanda will help with anything that I might miss or any further information that the Commission wants. I think the first part of this, well, to me anyway, is fairly straightforward, and that is the proposed rent increase of 4.8%, which is CPI plus 1% for social and affordable dwelling rents. That's a formula put forward by government, and by accepting that, it means that while it's regrettable that anyone sees an increase in their rent, it does help us maintain a housing revenue account that's healthy and fit for purpose, because obviously we do have a lot of calls on our housing revenue account. And similarly, with item B, there's a proposed increase in shared ownership and hostel rents by 4.8%, which follows the same formula as A. Where things do differ are in the service charges, and you'll note that there's a new service charge proposed this year for grounds maintenance in some of the blocks of flats, and that's arisen because Crawley Homes and Crawley Amenity Services conducted a joint exercise to establish whether the housing revenue account was being charged the correct amount for the grounds maintenance, and it turned out that Crawley Homes wasn't being charged the correct amount, and so the charge has been revised, and we feel that it's only right that the people that are living in the flats and have the advantage of the grounds maintenance should make a contribution towards it. But as you can see from Appendix B, some of the extra charges for some people would actually be, well, they'd be quite impactful, I think you could say. And obviously we don't want to see that amount of people having to face that sort of increase all at once in one year, because most people who live in socially rented housing haven't got a lot of money, and we don't want to do anything to disadvantage them. So what we're proposing, and this is you can see this in the paragraph 9.5 of the budget report, is that anything less than 40% we don't collect because it's not viable to do so, and that the charge for the grounds maintenance should be capped at £5 per week. We think that will mean more money coming into the housing revenue account, which is always a good thing. Amenity services will be getting paid the correct amount for the job, also good. And also, by capping it, the tenants won't be too severely financially disadvantaged. So I think that's it really, unless Mary's got anything to add. Well, so she has.
Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Just for clarity, it's not to recover anything less than 40p is proposed. I think, just to correct that, it's not 40%, so it's 40p. And just a cap at £5. So we already charge for cleaning. We have historically. However, we didn't. Members didn't take forward last year the full recharge for sheltered. So we're proposing the full recharge for the full cost recovery for all cleaning this year, and as Councillor Irvine has suggested, introducing grounds maintenance charges for assurance. And I know, Chair, that when we met, it was a question that you asked, that between Crawley Homes, and Councillor Irvine has alluded to it, between Crawley Homes and Neighbourhood Services, there was a big project that culminated about a year ago, where the Neighbourhood Services team were out mapping, measuring, timing to get an accurate picture, and plotting on maps, square footage, etc., to get a bespoke service charge per block. So we have developed also the cleaning as well. We've got a bespoke cleaning charge per block, as well as grounds maintenance. Obviously, we're suggesting a phased introduction of grounds maintenance as discussed. There will also be other service charges that come forward in future years. So, for example, electricity, we're still mapping that out across our properties, but to note, like I say, the bespoke service charge, but also we're going to be introducing, or the suggestion is that we introduce laundry charges as well that apply to our sheltered schemes, and this is to facilitate kind of cost recovery. The rents cover bricks and mortar, doesn't cover these additional services that are provided, so it is right that we recover them. Not doing so would impact future operating margins for the housing revenue account. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you both very much for the report. I'll now open up to questions and discussions. Do any councillors have any questions or any points they would like to raise? Councillor Lunnan.
What a treat. Thank you, Councillor Irvine. Such a rare occurrence for you to visit us at the OSC, but thank you for coming along. I've got a couple of questions that are technical, and then a couple of sort of broader questions. Just on the £5 cap, I'm trying to understand, because in Appendix A there are properties, I'm trying to open it up, there are properties that have more than a £5 charge. Does that mean they won't get the £5 charge, or is that a different charge? There are some that are £5.36p. I'm just trying to get my head around it. Sorry for the slight lack of preparation. And then secondly, it's not really a technical question, it's more of a general question. How many of our residents are on, of our Crawley Homes residents, are on some form of universal income? Not universal income, what's the phrase? Universal credit. And would these increases be captured by universal credit? They're the general RPI plus 1%. And then secondly, the service charges, are they also taken into account when somebody gets universal credit, or they would have to come out of their own disposable income rather than the amount that's set aside for housing, what would traditionally be called housing benefit, but isn't called housing benefit anymore?
Well, I'll have to defer to Amanda on the questions about universal credit, because I can't answer those questions. But I think Appendix A refers to cleaning charges, which aren't being capped. Appendix B refers to the grounds maintenance charges, which are being capped.
And just to come in on the point about universal credit or housing benefit, service charges are able to be claimed as part of a benefit claim, whether it be for universal credit or housing benefit. And yes, because it's below the local housing allowance rate, any increase in the rent is captured.
Do we know how many of our Crawley Homes residents are claiming universal credit as a percent, not as a number, but as a rough percentage, so we can get an idea for, what I'm trying to get at is understand how many residents in Crawley will be hit by these increases having to come out of their own pocket rather than it being covered by universal credit.
I don't know that question. The answer to that question, I'd have to come back to you outside of this session. Sorry.
I mean, otherwise,
Yeah.
I think I broadly support the charges. We need to make sure we're accounting for what money is being spent on Crawley Homes properly, and obviously we do need to make sure we can keep repairing and keep our facilities up to the required standard, which I think we do quite a good job of in Crawley. But there's always new challenges coming, so I'm broadly in favour. It'd just be interesting to get the answers to those questions outside of this meeting.
Okay, have you captured that for the minutes? Yeah, brilliant. Yep, Councillor Lanza.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. I think Councillor Irvine does attend these meetings quite regularly, actually. I just make that comment. He seems to, he does, yeah. So, on the report, I think the way it's worded is a little bit unusual, I think, because you've got some core recommendations, and then you've got a reference to paragraph 6.4, but paragraph 6.4 affords various choices. So I think the recommendations outside of paragraph 6.4 should be firmer in what they're actually about. So, for example, within those recommendations, you should have the nothing less than 40 pence and the £5 cap, rather than having to look for it within paragraph 6.4. You see, it's worded in a slightly unusual way to what we're used to. The recommendations aren't definitive. They refer to a paragraph which isn't definitive.
Do we have a response to that? And I'm sure it's something we can clarify certainly before Cabinet. But
Can I say first of all, thank you for noting my presence. I do feel like one of the ravens at the Tower of London sometimes, always present. I think Councillor Adams does make a good point, and it could be, I think, clarified further, and I'll see if that can be, if it's possible, that will be action between now and the Cabinet meeting on Wednesday. Can I say, I'm actually, I always say this, but because the OSC always supports what we do, and I'm always glad of that, because I do personally wrestle with the idea of putting up people's charges and making them, and having people pay more for their day-to-day living costs, because as we know, in Crawley, a lot of people just don't have very much money.
absolutely. Were there any? Oh, Councillor Crowe, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. Just, I make the observation that an increase in rents of 4.8% is about 40% higher than the current rate of inflation at 3.4%, although I recognise it's likely to be lower than the average rent increase for private rents that's out there. But I just made that observation because, of course, not only are rents going to be going up by 4.8%, so social rent being going up by 4.8%, but also when we get to the budget item, fees and charges are also going up by the same amount as well. So if you're a tenant and you pay your rent and you rent a garage, you're getting a double hit. And if you're on benefits, the benefits are increasing in April. I did just look it up, but I've forgotten the number now. But it is a lower percentage than, I think it's 3.8%. Yes, it is. It's a lower percentage than the increase. So how that affects the housing allowance, I'm not sure. But I do have a particular. But I think there's it all contributes to the squeeze on incomes for some tenants who are paying rent, because unless they do well enough to get a pay rise that's greater than the percentage of their rent increase. My question is, did I hear? I might have heard the Cabinet members say that it was government guidance that it's inflation plus 1%. Could you just have clarity on that, please?
I think there are a couple of matters in there. I don't know if you want to respond to them both about the 4.8, because I think that was something that was discussed on Friday and government guidance.
So the rate is applied as at, I believe it's October each year, and obviously this does reflect the cost that we have incurred over the previous year as well. Lots of building and maintenance costs, for example, have increased more than inflation. So, you know, this is only recovering our costs that we have spent on managing and maintaining the houses. Also as well, I think we have to recognise that over the last decade or so, social housing tenants have benefited in a number of ways where their rents haven't actually been increased in line with inflation. So we had 4 years of rent reduction and we've had rent capping as well. But there has also been the announcement that social landlords can move to rent convergence as well to increase their rents in future years beyond CPI +1.
Councillor Crowe, are you...
No, it's fine. And I do understand that the pressures for the housing maintenance and the costs that go up as well. But I was just highlighting the potential impact on some tenants who do have to pay rent. So I think Amanda Kendall said that it is government guidance that it's is it CPI +1%. Is that standard practice or?
Correct. That would be standard practice across the sector to do CPI +1.
Okay. Yep. Do you want to go next?
Oh, thank you very much. Under paragraph 5 on chapter 5, under description of issues to be resolved, it is stated in 5.3. I think there's a statement there that I find that may actually take off the meaning of why we are doing this. It says the increasing the rental fees will help offset increasing staff salaries. I think, and though it could be one of the reasons, but other reasons were also given, like in paragraph in 5.4. But that could actually be interpreted as the council is trying to increase the rent solely for the staff to take care of our staff. I mean, in terms of increasing staff salary. So, could we have more elaboration on other reasons why this, so that it won't just be the main reason, the reason why this has been increased? I mean, the reason why this increase is coming up. Yeah.
Okay, over to you.
Well, I'll do my best, Chair. Obviously, every year the housing revenue account. I don't want to teach anyone how to suck eggs, but housing revenue account is the account into which all the council rents are pooled, and out of that comes the cost of maintenance, running the service, and paying the staff. And obviously, if the income drops through right to buy or through unexpected repairs, work that has to be done, or whatever, then that affects the housing revenue account. That means that in the future, Crawley Homes can't do as much as it would like to do. And I do think that we are moving towards having a very good housing service. So we have to increase to mitigate those costs. To mitigate, I mean, we would not deny anyone an increase in their salary, would we? I don't think. So that money has to come from somewhere, and it has to come from the housing revenue account. So, and as we can see, paragraph 5.5, right to buy will, the present rate of right to buy applications could result in a loss of rent to the housing revenue account of £864,000. That has to be made up from somewhere. So, that is the reason why we are increasing. Well, we are proposing to increase the rents. I hope that's a good enough answer. If not, come back to me.
Okay, I mean, essentially what we're saying is we've got to balance the books. Yeah. And there are cost pressures, be they both staff and others with maintenance and other costs that have gone up disproportionate to inflation. I don't know if that was okay, if you're right with that answer. Are there any other questions or anything else that we want to raise from the floor? Sorry, have I missed someone? Oh, sorry, can you turn the mic on? Okay. Right, I don't think there are any other questions from the floor. So, all the committee members have had the opportunity to speak, so I'd like to thank the officer for an interesting report and the feedback that was given, and of course Councillor Irvine as well. I move that the Commission notes the report and requests the views expressed during the debate are fed back to the Cabinet. I think there's a range of those that we've got through the Commission's comment sheet. And here's the point at which I somehow managed to upset somebody in the room, but please, could I have a seconder for this? Any seconders? Thank you, Councillor Ayling. Is that agreed? Agreed. Marvellous. So the recommendations are agreed. Thank you very much indeed. So we'll just give a moment for movement, and we're now going to move on to the Crawley Growth Deal report, which is going to be given by Councillor Nawaz and Clem Smith, Head of Economy and Planning. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. and thank you, Chair, and the Commission. I'm here and quite delighted to see this report presenting proposals for a refreshed Crawley Growth Deal in partnership with West Sussex County Council. It is nearly 10 years since the two authorities signed our original growth deal, and since then we have achieved a huge amount. Over 80 million of public and private funding investment has been unlocked and 13 regeneration schemes successfully completed. These include town centre regeneration schemes like Queen Square, Queensway, Eastern Gateway Scheme, Western Boulevard, a major network rail investment in Crawley rail station, plus a range of highways, bus lane and public realm improvements in Manor Royal. Both authorities are continuing this momentum with our 7.4 million station gateway scheme starting on site to transform the Martlet's Crawley bus station and then across Station Way to the railway station. It is crucial that we refresh Crawley's growth priorities ahead of the launch of the new Sussex and Brighton Combined Authority, which will play a leading role in determining the future regeneration investment across Sussex and Brighton using regional development funds from the government. We want to use the growth deal to highlight Crawley's fantastic potential for significant growth return on such investments. Let's not forget, Crawley's economy is worth over 5.8 billion per annum in economic outputs. Over one-fifth of overall West Sussex economic output, with just 2% of landmass. It's quite an achievement for a small town of Crawley like ours. We've done really well in the past. And this is not only due to the presence of Gatwick Airport, but our growth deal also highlights how Crawley enjoys the major presence of range of high growth business sectors which are recognised as priority growth sector under government's industrial strategy. One of our growth deal strategic priorities are boost productivity, investment, innovation and job creation in these high value sectors as a pivotal mechanism to drive overall economic growth in Crawley. Our growth deal also advocates a priority need to empower the local workforce by creating skills training pathways for local residents to across better quality jobs, working with likes of Crawley College. We also want to position Crawley as a leader in green business innovation and the transition to net zero. We want to maximise the benefits of Crawley's economy from the growth of Gatwick Airport, and we want to do this by unlocking the land needed to attract a major share of the 1 billion of business investment and 14,000 jobs investment that Gatwick will be delivered from airport growth. Our growth deal aims for ongoing investment in digital infrastructure in Crawley. We want to support Manor Royal's continuing transformation as a modern business park and boost Crawley Town Centre as a dynamic business growth hub. We also want to create the new town centre neighbourhood of 3,000 homes. We aim to reinforce these priorities through a new programme of regeneration schemes, a Crawley Growth Programme 2. Highlights include a major new employment site at Gatwick Green. We to continue our regeneration of Crawley Town Centre, including the delivery of high-grade small business co-working space at the Queensway Stores building, transform public space along the Broadway, Broadwalk and the Boulevard. working with Metrobus to deliver a new bus expressway from the town centre to the airport, and continuing to the transformation of Manor Roll as a business park. We believe the new Crawley growth deal with West Sussex County Council presents a compelling case to the incoming mayoral authority for further major regeneration funding investments into Crawley, and highlights just how brilliantly positioned Crawley is to deliver an excellent growth return on that investments. I'm very pleased and wholeheartedly support this growth deal, and I look forward to the first stage of the deal being implemented in partnership with colleagues at County Council. Thank you, Chair. If my colleague Clem Smith wants to add anything, you're more than welcome to add.
Anything to add, Clem?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Okay, I'll open it up to the floor. Are there any comments or questions that people would like to raise? Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for a really good presentation and a good report as well. I think it's great that we, with our partners, continue to show ambition in the lead up to the new mayoral combined authority and to the new unitary authorities. I think it's a really important statement. The Crawley growth programme is one of several across West Sussex, and I would say in many ways it's the one that's most advanced and has delivered so much, and that's really testament to the excellence of the partnership working. And we do have some great partners. Metrobus, innovative, all sorts of great ideas they come forward with. The Manor Royal Business Improvement District, a very small team head that up, but they're very, very creative people, and they get involved in activities which you might not normally associate with the Business Improvement District, such as support for the arts. That's just one example of their creative approach. And also West Sussex County Council, I couldn't rattle off a list of good partners without mentioning. So what I'm really pleased about is the £80 million of investment that's been leveraged over the decade. And Councillor Nawaz mentioned the 20% of economic output of the county. I think if you measure that in business rates percentage, it's even higher. At times it can be a third, pushing towards 35%, depending on economic conditions. What I'm really pleased to see is a greater boldness in our approach to the safeguarded land. Not just us, but I think local government in West Sussex, so I include the county tier. I think a few years ago we were a bit too hesitant about our viewpoint on the safeguarded land, but that's really nicely firmed up in this report. After all, we're talking about 530 hectares of land which could be used for diversified economic growth, and we all know we need that. And that comment needs to be seen in the context of anticipated aviation expansion, not just at Gatwick through the development consent order, but also at Heathrow, Stansted and Luton. If all of that anticipated expansion comes about, I think the report notes that we have decades worth of aviation expansion capacity without that safeguarded land being needed in any way, shape or form. It's great as well to see Gatwick Green coming forward as an example of economic diversification. I've engaged with quite a few people involved with that, and some of them, I don't know how they stuck with it, because they stuck with it with decades, some of these people, and they must have thought it would never happen, but it's great to see it coming along. So I warmly welcome Growth Deal 2, and I hope and expect with ourselves, West Sussex, the other partners, and the new mayoral authority and the successor unitary authorities, we can make it at least as successful as Growth Deal 1.
Thank you. I don't think there's any response required there, or if you'd like to briefly.
Thank you, Chair. I think what Councillor Lanza, thank you very much for your positive comments on that. It does show is clearly Crawley is a very ambitious town, and we want to achieve as much as good possible for our residents. And working together it clearly shows with all our partners we can achieve large and bigger things. So I'm really pleased to see the positive coming from the West Sussex side of things as well. And Councillor Lansett has clearly mentioned is very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lunnan.
Yeah, unfortunately, I find myself agreeing with everything Councillor Lands has said. It's very regrettable, but I do agree with it all. I also welcome, I mean, I've been around long enough when we first launched the growth deal, and it has been a success, and it is partly down to successful partnerships. So, you know, I can only say well done to both CBC and West Sussex, and then all the other partners that we've got with that. I've just got a few questions through the appendix saying what's promised for the growth scheme 2. Notably, firstly, on the high-grade small business space, it talks about the Queensway stores, but then when we get into the budget monitoring, it says the Queensway stores can't go ahead, so I just thought it'd be interesting to hear a bit of an update on that. Carrying on down, we've got the hydrogen bus expressway, but obviously at the moment we don't have any hydrogen buses operating because Metrobus have paused their use after the fire on them. Do we have any update on whether that will still... You know, do we still want a bus expressway, whether it's hydrogen or not, and how does that impact that? The Manor Royal Town Centre arterial cycle walking route sounds lovely, and it has one very minor bullet point, which is determined scheme route. And as we all know, when we've tried to develop cycle routes from Three Bridges before, it's proved really difficult in getting a cycle route through to Manor Royal. So I'd be interested to know how we're going to do that. Then there's Three Bridges railway station improvements, which of course has been the desired output of the Crawley growth programme for the last 10 years, and we've permitted planning permission as a council here, but we still don't seem to be getting anywhere with that actually happening. So it'd be interesting to hear an update on that. And I think that was it from questions that I had on those. Anything else on that?
Did you manage to get a note of those? I got 4, I think.
I think it was 4.
Yeah. Okay. Right, I'll pass over to you guys.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Lennon, for your questions. I think there's a lot of technical questions you've asked. I think I'm happy to probably give a very high-level update, but I think I'll pass on to our colleague Clem to give you a little bit more detailed answer on the technicalities of it, because I think it's more technical to understand how we're shifting those things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I can answer those 4 questions for you. So the first one about the Queensway stores, high-grade small business space. This is simply to do with the fact that in the current envelope for the Crawley Growth Programme, there's insufficient budgetary resources needed. So we're going to need to find alternative sources. So the purpose of this will be to bid to the mayoral authority to secure the necessary additional resources we need to unlock delivery of that scheme. Obviously, it's very great news that last week Planning Committee gave planning consent for that. So we'll be in a position to have a more shovel-ready scheme to present to the mayoral combined authority. On the subject of the bus expressway, we view this as a top priority investment as part of the Crawley Growth Programme 2. Primary reason for that is about trying to reduce journey times between the town centre and Gatwick Airport, with the ability for the town centre then to harness significant economic benefits from the airport's growth. Whether or not that is hydrogen or conventional diesel, as you know, is an open question. The answer to your question is we would want to proceed with that anyway. Hopefully it will be through the medium of hydrogen. But it will be progressing anyway. In relation to the arterial cycle route that you mentioned, we will be looking at a refresh of the local cycling and walking infrastructure plan off the back of the Crawley Growth deal. Colleagues, officers are working on that at the moment, liaising closely with opposite numbers at West Sussex County around that. Ultimately, be looking at working with the County Council to unlock other resources from the likes of Active Travel England and potentially bring that to bear in association with regional development funds that we hope to secure from the mayoral authority. It's quite the case that levels of investment needed will be significant, but if we can combine access to resources via the mayoral authority with Active Travel England, then we have the potential to secure the necessary resources to deliver that. And the last question about Three Bridges Station. The Three Bridges Station scheme remains part of Crawley Growth Programme 1. It remains the intention to deliver the programme as per the planning permission in Crawley Growth Programme 1. The fact that it's in the new Crawley Growth Deal is anticipation of the fact that we're going to need further investment in Three Bridges Station going forward, recognising the primary strategic role that Three Bridges Station plays as a gateway into Crawley. As we see Crawley grow, we want to see further investment in the station to ensure it's fit for purpose for that increased growth, both population-wise and also economy-wise.
Okay, if you've got any questions on that.
Yeah, those questions, I'd forgotten to ask one more, and it's more of a holistic question. Going forward, obviously, we will very likely be subsumed by a new unitary, which would take out the requirement for the partnerships working together, although there's still obviously bodies that we will want to access for funding in that new unitary, such as the Mayoral or Active Travel England, so on and so forth. How have unitaries of large areas with specific economic growth areas, do we have any idea how they've approached something like this, and would, you know, a subset of the unitary councillors who represent Crawley be able to voice their opinions on such a programme going forward, if that makes sense?
We would certainly want to engage and use this document as a starting point for engagement with, initially that it would be the shadow unitary authority when it comes into being from April 2027. So what we're endeavouring to do is to leave a coherent and powerful narrative about Crawley's growth aspirations, but also a tangible narrative about what we would actually want to deliver to achieve those growth aspirations. Obviously recognise the fact that we have an extremely strong track record working closely with West Sussex County Council colleagues, with a view, hopefully, to be encouraging the unitary to pick this up and run with it. It's quite clear that in terms of the funding programmes envisaged through the Mayoral Combined Authority, a lot of those will be coming forward after the commencement of the new unitary authority. So we would want to be able to pass this on in as strong and thought through as much as possible, so they can pick this up and be in a strong position to be able to bid for the resources that Crawley needs to continue this growth trajectory.
Were there any other questions or comments from the floor? From my own point of view as chair, I will say from previous discussions that for me this represents a really ambitious plans and a real passion and care for Crawley from all its authors, partners and contributors, and I think that rings through. And I think I liked what you said as well, Councillor Nawaz, about, and yourself, Clem, about developing a really, really compelling case going forward. It's not without some sadness in many respects that we may lose that voice of Crawley and the phenomenal work that goes on here. Okay, no other questions or points. So, all committee members have had the opportunity to speak, so I'd like to thank the officers for a fantastic report and Councillor Nawaz. I move that the Commission notes the report and requests the views expressed during the debate are fed back to the Cabinet through the Commission's comment sheet. Could I have a seconder? Thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. Marvellous. So the recommendations are agreed. We now move on to Q3 budget monitoring, the report and supplementary agenda information, and this will be from Councillor Jones, Caroline Martlew, Head of Corporate Finance, and Carey Manger, Finance Business Partner. We'll just take a moment for a swap over. Just pause for one moment longer. Okay, Councillor Jones, can you please introduce the report, and thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm pleased to be here tonight to brief members on the Council's financial performance to the end of Q3. including projected revenue outturn, capital programme progress and use of reserves. The Council forecasts a net general fund surplus for 25-26 of £126,000, which is an improvement of £358,000 since Q2. This improvement is largely driven by additional investment income. The significant service pressures reported previously remain, most notably vacant property costs and temporary accommodation. Ashdown House is currently being considered for inclusion in the Crawley Growth Programme as a small business town centre commercial space scheme to replace the Queensway Stores location. Further updates will be provided once the business case is finalised and the scheme is adopted. There have been no changes to the projected overspend for empty property costs reported at Q2, and alternative solutions continue to be investigated. The Crate Building and Town Hall lettings, the budget for the year includes income from letting another floor for the Crate Building, which has not materialised to date. So I'm advised it is an appropriate point in the year to now recognise the net loss, which, after applying the loss allowance and the contingency budget for delays, amounts to £308,000. This risk was recognised when the budget was set last year, but on a more positive note, Chair, there very recently have been several viewings undertaken by prospective tenants. How do I feel about this adjustment? Clearly it's disappointing, but given how the world and the office accommodation market has changed since COVID, we would be applying a level of hindsight to going ahead in the first place. Temporary accommodation. Homeless continues to be a significant pressure on the Council's budget. The cost of temporary accommodation is forecast to exceed the Council's budget by £1.13 million this year. This is expected to be met from additional grant funding, and I think that needs recognising. The previous government was more than prepared for us to run down all our available money, which was bad in so many ways, and it should be noted that the numbers for TA have plateaued, and next year's budget includes a significant capital investment for housing. Now, while we should recognise and applaud the improved support on temporary accommodation from the current government, we are using more of our base budget than would be ideal. I think that's fair to say. And indeed, the housing benefit subsidy to local authorities remaining frozen at 2011 LHA levels still needs to be addressed by the government. But it should be said we are undoubtedly in a better position than we were before. Chair, I think I need to point out in paragraph 5.7.2, there is a typo in the report. It should read the Council has now received new burdens fundings from the Home Office to settle our 23-24 and 2024-25 claims. Investment interest receivable is forecast to be £2.224 million, which is an extra £1.094 million compared to Q2. The increase is due to sound Treasury management in managing in-year cash flow from timings of capital spend, additional income from right to buy sales, and better utilisation of bank facilities together with later than expected Bank of England rate cuts. It would be imprudent to be over-optimistic at the beginning of the year, as cash flow can be extremely volatile and cannot be guaranteed. This is all, of course, with the usual caveat that it will be challenging to do so well in 2026-27. But we have predicted leaner times before, and more pessimistic expectations have not yet been proved correct. So may we continue to be wrong on that one. But in terms of savings delivery, just to report back, we are making good progress against our savings target. The report summarises the savings achieved to date, which are £983,000 against a full year of £1.732 million. The lower figure is due to the timing and set-up costs of some savings, which were anticipated when the budget was set last year. It should be noticed, however, that the expected full-year savings for future years is £1.598 million. Chair, I must say that while we are admittedly not yet at the end of Q4, to be told that we expect around 92% of our savings to be realised going forward is extremely positive. Even with the best of intentions, when saving plans are agreed in any organisation, it's often the case that they do not always work out or can't be implemented for whatever reason. Moving to the housing revenue account, Crawley Homes ring-fenced account, which we've spent some time talking about already. The forecast variance for the year is an overspend of £1.73 million. This is mainly due to a delay in the implementation of increased service charges, creating an income shortfall of 905,000, and urgent repair work that was identified during the extensive stock condition surveys that we've been undertaking, which amounts to £920,000. This has all been partially offset by the HRA share of the additional investment income, which amounted to about 518,000. Again, I'm not going to make any apologies, Chair, nor I doubt is the Cabinet Member for Housing for this overspend. We will ensure repairs are prioritised to maintain standards for decent homes. There was also the need to get service charges right and striking the right balance of what is fair under all the circumstances, which I think the Commission had a good explanation of earlier. Some of this relating to service charges on ground maintenance wasn't possible last year, when necessarily our time and attention in Crawley homes had to be devoted to addressing the inspection by the regulator for social housing. Moving to the capital programme, of the budget of some £68 million, the programme is largely on track, with a projected slippage of £3 million into future years, which is detailed in the report. Cabinet approval is sought for an additional 231,000 in new capital projects funded from in-year capital receipts. These projects cover fire safety and energy efficiency at our community centres and support for sustainability projects through access grants. The reserves, the general fund balance, continues to be above the recommended minimum balance at a forecast 4.54 million, which is well above our £3 million minimum target, which sets us in good stead for next year's budget. The HRA balance is maintained at £5 million. Total usable reserves have increased from £65 million to £74 million, driven mainly by the extra capital receipts from right to buy. With regards to Treasury management, all activities were compliant with the Council's approved Treasury management strategy, with the exemption of a temporary breach of the maturity structure indicator, 36% versus the 30% limit. The Council took advantage of a favourable time to restructure some of the HRA borrowing. This produced significant savings for the HRA, so the risk of refinancing was considered and deemed to be acceptable by the Section 151 officer, having sought advice from the Council as Treasury management advisors. Chair, there will also be some supplemental papers tabled to Cabinet for this report, and also the budget that will transfer further funds for acquisition of additional Crawley Homes properties from buyback for shared ownership and former council housing. Some are for both reports, but I'll cover the principle here because it's exactly the same. They're relatively small sums. There's 730,000 this financial year and a further £1 million for 26-27. But this will be a really useful and important expenditure, because adding to our stock is helpful to the HRA in the long term from rental income. But it also is very much spend to save if you think about it, because it means more stock is available for people who otherwise might need to be placed in temporary accommodation. And as a rule of thumb, I'd say to members, the basic saving to the general fund in such circumstances for someone who is housed rather than goes into our TA costs is approximately £16,500 per annum for a one-bedroom property, £34,000 for a 2 or 3 bedroom property, or £44,000 for a 4-bedroom. So everything we can do on this is positive. So clearly, that's what the state of the council for this quarter, Chair. Here to answer any questions, and if it gets too technical, I can pass to Caroline and Carey, who have joined us. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for the very comprehensive report. I'll open it up now to questions and discussions. Do any councillors, Bob, then Tim, then Duncan?
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you for the report. I just had one question at this stage, and there's reference in several places to the prudential indicator for the maturity structure of borrowing for loans maturing within 24 months and up to 5 years. And that indicator was breached. The upper limit should have been 30%, and it was breached. And I think the leader said it was a temporary breach, but I'm not reading from this report that it's temporary. I suppose my question is how temporary it is. I mean, it feels like something that's still in place from my reading of the report rather than a temporary one-off change. But 30 to 36% doesn't sound a lot, but looking at the table on page 127, and I could do the calculation, but it might take a minute or two. But there'll be several £1 million involved in breaching the limit from 30% to 36%. So alongside the temporary question, my other question would be, in terms of the scheme of delegation, if you like, while I accept the reasoning given for the change in the indicator, where was the political authorisation? Was there a political authorisation given the amount of money involved in the breach of that indicator? And if not, where was the decision-making level in the scheme of delegation? Thank you.
Who would like to answer that one? Caroline first.
Yeah, I think I'll answer that one, Chair. The prudential indicators, they're set. They're internal ones that are set by the council. So we set them at the beginning of the year at the sort of levels that we believe is prudent. Now, the debt restructuring for the HRA resulted in hundreds of thousands of pounds of in-year savings for the HRA and going forwards, which meant that I made the decision. So I have got delegation, and so has the chief accountant, with it being reported to the next meeting, which is what we're doing now. So we are meeting our sort of statutory requirements for the council. And yes, it continues until we restructure these loans again. And Kerry's probably in a better position to explain what he actually did. But next year's prudential indicator is 36%. So we've met it. So we're happy the council is not at unnecessary risk, and that was the important part of this decision. It's yes, and that's why the indicator's been increased for the coming financial year, to give us the time to restructure those loans again.
But before we move on, did you have... Yeah.
Thanks, Chair. Again, I do it...
Sorry, Councillor Lanza, did you have something you wanted to add as well?
I just wanted to, because I certainly wouldn't want anyone to be under the conclusion that this was done without my knowledge. I was certainly consulted and was fully in agreement that the loan restructuring was undoubtedly financially favourable and in the interests of the HRA. I mean, this is good for everyone. It was the right thing to do. So, and that was explained to me.
Okay, Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you both. And again, I accept the reasoning for the decision, but I think I'd like to be reassured, given that the prudential indicators are really quite important and they have quite a magnitude of money associated with them when they're breached, that where we heard, indeed, Councillor Jones was consulted, that would be standard practice in the future if there was a decision being taken that would breach a prudential indicator.
So you want it confirmed that there will always be a consultation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can confirm there is always a consultation. These decisions can't... Sorry, I didn't mean to mislead you that I did this in isolation. No, we did consult, but I mean, obviously the calculations of the prudential indicators clearly sit with the finance department.
Super hard sums. Okay, Councillor Lunnon.
Thank you, and thank you for this report to Councillor Jones and to the Head of Finance. I think I and lots of, hopefully, residents of Crawley are grateful for the work, especially in the Treasury team, in returning yet another sort of good set of outcomes for our residents and getting more money for this council through sensible investments, and hopefully that will pay off for the officers involved in future reorganisations of the council. I do have one question around our are overspending or other spending that wasn't planned. Maybe there were two key factors. One was the create floor not being let. The other one was around the leisure and wellbeing repairs. It says there's £225,000. That's obviously quite a lot for one quarter. I wondered if you could just go into a bit more detail as to actually what these kind of things were. It just says these are reactive repairs to property, pathways and other infrastructure owned by the council, but it's come under the leisure and wellbeing budget. So I'm just intrigued to know what they are that specifically is owned by leisure and wellbeing, especially pathways that we feel come under that, unless all footpaths come under leisure and wellbeing.
Do we have a response here to that?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I mean, yes, I agree with Councillor Lunnan about the investment returns being very pleasing, and long may they continue. The create floor, I'm clearly, Chair, back when we first set some of the targets for the create building, we set ourselves what we hoped were realistic targets for getting it filled, and so we have now reached a point where unfortunately it's not worked as well as had been anticipated. But I can absolutely assure members that the efforts are being made to address this. Also, it does seem like the commercial office market is now starting to step up. That's in part related to Gatwick, but generally I think it's a sign that the economy regionally or certainly locally is in a good position. In terms of leisure and wellbeing, yes, funnily enough, Councillor, and I asked about how this got allocated, and on the grounds that I could only conclude it got put there because if you're on the paths, there's a lot of walking to be done, which is very healthy, isn't it? But in terms of the pathways, this was all necessary spending. There is a fair number of walkways now that are reaching. Or reached a point where we couldn't let them continue in the state they were, and my understanding and the head of corporate finance's understanding is that the majority of these were related to sort of pathways that are within parks. It will not include the wonderful pathways that we'll be getting in Goffs Park, Chair. That's a separate budget item. But this has all been thought was applied as to which was the appropriate portfolio to apply these to, Councillor Lunnan, and this was the one that was identified.
Is that okay? Councillor Crowe.
Thank you, Chairman. If I draw members' attention to paragraph 5.1 and the table under the general fund, I make an observation looking at the difference between the variance projected at quarter 2 and quarter 3. If we just look at the top slice before we look at the additional investment interest that's been realised, and we see a deteriorating position from quarter 2 to quarter 3, and it would appear that the cabinet overall, as in the top line, and then the majority of the portfolios, but not all, there are 3 that have come in under, but leisure and wellbeing is quite a bit over, projected at 328,000, are coming in over, and that it would appear budgets have not been gotten a grip of, for want of a better phrase. But thankfully, what saves the day is the extra investment interest, which you can see it protection at quarter 2 as 1.13 million, and is now projected at quarter 3 to 2.224 million. That's an increase of 1.094 million pounds. That's a huge difference in just one quarter as to what's projected for the rest of the year. And it sort of brings me around to, and if you look at paragraph 5.9 under investment interest, and Councillor Lanza tells me that he made all these points that are listed here at a previous scrutiny committee meeting, but I do have to sort of question the forecasting, notwithstanding that, of course, very much welcome the additional investment interest that has been realised and that will be realised. That if perhaps this would been able to be perhaps more accurately predicted when the budget was being set, we might not have had to have made all the cuts that we did make at the previous budget. I'll just remind the committee that we we removed the outreach play service, which was, I think was about £94,000 a year. That was scrapped last year as part of the budget, and yet now we're predicting overall, thanks to the investment interest, I have to say, basically that a surplus of 358,000. So we could have not scrapped that at last year's budget and still be coming in predicted a surplus. So we'll just make that point. And then I've got an actual question on page 104. You'll see the new fees and charges. And again, this was part of last year's budget as well. You may, or rather, this year's budget that we're in now that was set last year. And you'll see that the litter enforcement is predicted at 70k to come in rather than 170. Although I do recall very recently asking at a meeting, and I can't remember if it was Scrutiny or if it was Cabinet, I know it was one of them, I asked around whether that was actually starting up because it hadn't done yet. And I was told, yes, it's starting pretty much imminently and there'll be some publicity around it. But, well, there isn't much time to get 70k in, is there? Because it's already February and we've only got 2 more months of this financial year left. So presumably they're going to be raking it in quite a lot in a short period just to get to that 70k. And then underneath it, we've got the car parking charges, which that figure of 388 I remember well, and that was part of last year's budget. But when the budget was being set, we were told that also included parking charges at K2 and the Wharf, and that was proving very unpopular. So the council quite rightly withdrew those parking charges and then said that they still expected to get that income anyway. And also included charging for parking at Goffs Park, which has been approved. I don't think it's quite come in yet, but it's about to come in. But so that money in this financial year, or very little, will be realised. So it begs the question: how much, as we're going to meet that 388, how much of that 388,000 was being attributed to the now not implemented new parking charges at the Wharf and K2, because clearly that would have brought in quite a significant amount, but yet that figure was still 388 when that was presented. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, I think there's one general point on budgeting and 2 more specific on money raised through litter enforcement and parking charges.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, just to answer some of the points that have been raised by Councillor Crowe. I mean, as far as during the year, there's inevitably variations from quarter to quarter because cost pressures can take effect in different portfolio areas in different ways, and that's just how it has proven. The report is reporting that. Obviously, the more significant levels of expenditure, when there's been variations, are actually written specifically into the report. So the very significant ones would be there, and if they're not listed, then that's because they've been variable. But there might just be a few of them. I don't think that's because the service areas themselves haven't got an adequate grip. He used the word. I hesitate to use that on what's going on. It's just how it's turned out this way. There have, of course, been other quarters in other times where we've had favourable outturns, and indeed it's been quite clear from some of the service areas that there have been. I mean, just to pick up on the point about the forecasting of investment returns. I would just make the point that if we're too optimistic and then we're proved wrong, that in itself would create more problems than it does the other way around. And there's something slightly contradictory here, because we talk to the what's the word, the fact that the fact that there are variations which are unfavourable, which can amount to quite much, is then pointed out. And then suddenly it's, actually, did we have to cut what we did last year? Well, either it's slightly contradictory. Either we're spending too much or we're too cautious. We're trying to strike the right balance, I think, Chair. It's fair to say, in terms of that we could sail very close to the wind on all this, but there's always the risk, if you do, that you're not going to you're not going to come out of it too well. Litter enforcement, I can't comment specifically. I'll have to look into further into into the specifics of that. I think it's fair to say that it has. Chris Page, I think, might be able to answer a bit more and I'll stop shortly and let him. But in terms of how that's gone, it's probably taken slightly longer than we'd initially hoped, and for good reasons. Car parking charges, the figure that's there in the table, I'm told we're going to meet this target from the other charges or the other work we've done, so that the ones that haven't been implemented yet will not be quite so vital this year. He mentioned Goss Park. I'd like to mention Goss Park. We would have already done this, but for the unacceptable delays from West Sussex County Council in processing the traffic regulation orders, of which I was on the brink of writing to the cabinet member before it finally came through, which I think at the very beginning of this year actually. But in total, we waited about, I think it's fair to say, from the time they were aware we wanted it, we waited about 5 months for that to get processed, which is extremely unimpressive, I have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Do you want to speak on the parking charges?
Yeah, I can do. Thank you, Chair. And to Councillor Crow's question, it's specifically on the litter enforcement and the car parking charges. So litter enforcement, as it says in the table, the figures were overstated. So there has been an error where the 170, the 100,000 of that is also counted earlier on in the table in the community protections. That was from staffing changes, so that gave us the 100,000. And then the 70,000 was from the actual enforcement contract. So effectively the 100 was counted in two areas, and that's been spotted as we were implementing and has been noted there in that final column. So that's why the next year's figure is corrected to 70,000, because we think we're still going to continue to raise the amount we predicted. The difference is that the staffing was counted earlier on. On the car parking charges, yes, Councillor Crow's right. That there were changes to what the original proposal was, but there were additional changes that were also made. So you remember when we did the parking strategy, we've brought forward additional ideas about things like Orchard Street Car Park, which is going to be renamed High Street Car Park, and changing the parking charges there. And through the additional changes we made, we think that's also going to get us back to where we'd originally wanted to be. So we're still confident we're going to make that income in future years. In this year, as you see in the table, we're saying it's in progress. We haven't got a figure yet for where that is on either of those. Oh, sorry, I should say on the litter enforcement, we've just taken the significant operational decision to appoint a contractor to carry out the litter enforcement work. So in this year's contract, we're not going to make the 170 or close to it, because we're at the end of the year, the 70, but that contract is in place. And I think, as Georgina Barrett said, it was at a meeting recently you were at, Councillor, where we're moving forward with that, and this financial year we'll have that in place and we'll start that operating.
Okay, we all right with that? Are there any other questions or comments from the floor? Apologies. Nope. Okay, all committee members have had the opportunity to speak, so I would thank the officers and council leader for the report. I move that the Commission notes the reports and requests the views expressed during the debate are fed back to the Cabinet through the Commission's comment sheet. Can I ask for a seconder? Thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Right, so the recommendation's agreed. So we'll now consider the Budget and Council Tax report and supplementary agenda information, again from Councillor Jones, Caroline and Carey.
Thank you,
Councillor
Chair.
Jones, if you want to introduce a report, sorry.
Thank you, that's no problem at all, Chair. Just to confirm, Chair, Crawley's had a very good provisional settlement and an increase of 33.8% over the 3 years of the settlement, with 11.9% for next year. And once specific service-related grants have been taken into account, this amounts to about an extra £1 million of general grant. We've done much better on our business rates than forecast in the budget strategy, with an increase of £2.2 million. This is due to a higher rateable value, chiefly due to Gatwick Airport. The increase in funding is very welcome, Chair, but the risk of appeal by the airport remains, although we are cushioned by the government safety net, which guarantees our income for next year. We also need to remember that government funding only covers a proportion of our gross expenditure. We still have to help ourselves through fees and charges and council tax. This is one of the reasons why the proposal is to apply the increase in precept of just under 3%, as outlined in the papers. making the case to government that we require further support in future would otherwise be undermined if we weren't taking the opportunities already presented to us. Following on from the hard savings that we had to make last year, officers and the Cabinet have worked extremely hard to identify some £865,000 of efficiency savings for 26-27. All of this stands us in good stead up for the lead up to vesting day. The budget has taken out some of the risk in relation to commercial property and allows for a contingency budget which provides much needed funding to provide the council with capacity to deliver and improve against our priorities as set out in the corporate plan right up until vesting day. The main risks identified in the budget are a higher than anticipated pay awards, Home Office new burdens funding and Create building lettings, as well as general cost pressures. These are laid out in the report. All of this allows us to maintain spending in our priority areas and retain the capacity at the council to deliver the services that we think are important to our residents. Going into more detail, Chair, as we will recall, Crawley had been disproportionately impacted by unfavourable funding settlements over a large number of years, and up till 25-26, the cumulative effect was that the council's core spending power, the government settlement grants plus council tax, was less than it was in 2011/2012 in real terms, which is quite a devastating statement to be able to make. Crawley received its provisional finance settlement in December 2025 based on the government's fair funding review, and through the fair funding review the government has undertaken a redistribution of funding through a full baseline reset for the business rates baseline funding, major changes to all the relative needs formulas and the simplification of many grants. The council has benefited from these changes with a settlement that goes some way to better reflect the need in the borough, especially the temporary accommodation pressures. The government's also delivered on a multi-year settlement, giving certainty in the second and third year of the settlement by representing a minimum level of funding. However, each of these latter 2 years are subject to change until they are locked in by their own settlement. The overall funding outlook for 26-27, our funding rises from 17.482 million to 20.770 million, which is an increase of 3.288 million. Our retained business rates are guaranteed at 6.729 million. However, as I mentioned earlier, there is some risk from that because some rateable values, Gatwick Airport being one, has gone up quite substantially. The balanced budget, as I said, recommend council tax increase of 2.99%, which represents a £17.15 rise for Band D, which as I will maintain, is always excellent value for money in terms of what they get from this council. Moving to the capital programme, a capital programme of 88.27 million is proposed for 26-27, which includes major housing and infrastructure schemes, notably HRA acquisitions to increase the supply of larger homes, temporary accommodation acquisitions, and the Little Trees burial extension, which is going to secure 30 years additional space. Our capital resources have improved via increased right to buy, receipts and disposals. However, future schemes may require borrowing. Given the scale of our council house building programme to meet the demands caused by our declared housing emergency, as well as an ambitious general fund capital programme, the projects set out in the report will not only be an impressive achievement, Chair, they will be particularly so in the face of some of the challenges we were previously faced with. Moving on to the Crawley Homes Council House Service, the housing revenue account. This is the expenditure and income for running the council's own housing stock and closely rated services or facilities, which are provided primarily for the benefit of the council's own tenants. The main points to note here were largely covered earlier on, Chair, which is that the budget is based on a rent increase of 4.8%, which is CPI plus 1%, and that is in the budget papers. And the HRI continues to see an increase in repairs and maintenance spend. The main drivers of the increase continue to be inflationary cost pressures, as well as the outcome of the HRA's programme of stock condition surveys and the legislation changes for decent homes and AWAB's law, resulting in an increased budget for 26-27 of 1.063 million. As far as reserves and robustness are concerned, Section 25 of the Local Government Act 2003 requires a Section 151 officer to report to their authority on the robustness of the estimates and the adequacy of the reserves provided for within the budget. I'm delighted to say, you can ask her if you like, but it is the view of the Head of Corporate Finance that the process is followed as sound and well established. The resultant estimates are robust and reserves are in an adequate level. And the pay policy statement that the Council is required to produce for each financial year, which sets out the Council's policies relating to the pay of its workforce. The statement is updated annually and must be approved by the Council, and the pay policy statement for 26-27 is also contained in the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions or observations from the floor? Councillor Crowe first.
Thanks, Chairman. So I've got a few. So how about if I do a couple and then dip out so that other members, if that's okay.
Okay, go ahead.
The opportunity. So first of all, I'll start by saying that I do welcome the 3-year settlement. I think that is a sound thing for government to do. That certainty is helpful. So we've got this table at the bottom of page 132, paragraph 5.6, which shows the and actually I welcome as well the amalgamation of government grants as well, having that process a bit more simplified. That seems sound to me as well. So we've got this this table, and the leader mentioned 3.288 million. So just to clarify, is that the net increase in government grant once we amalgamate the grants? Is that the net increase? And the leader mentioned about it being locked in, or maybe locked in for the next 2 years. So have we got that certainty yet? Because my understanding for the county, for example, is that fairer funding is they're going to be £7 million down this year and then £10 million down each of the next 2 years. And so while Crawley Borough has done well, the county has done poorly out of so-called fairer funding, and of course it is still within Crawley the same council taxpayers that are paying the bills. So just a bit of certainty about the locking in and that 3.288 figure, if I may, first, Chairman.
Okay, over to Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. The 3.288 million isn't net; it's gross. So that's our increase in our general government grants. But what we've got to remember, and I've got to read this out because it is really complicated, we had a net reduction in housing grants because those were service specific of 0.454 million. We didn't get the new burdens funding for simpler recycling because that was rolled into the settlement. That was 667,000. Then we've got the currently, as you were notified in the Q3 report, the government grants are paying for temporary accommodation. Those are now ring-fenced, where we could use 20% of those grants for our temporary accommodation. So that's resulted in a £1.683 million pressure. So net, it works out about £1 million. It's very difficult to sort of chase it around, but when we did all our sort of reconciliations, we come to about £1 million, which is a welcome million, Chairman. Locked in.
Great. Thank you for that clarification. That's really helpful. And of course, I recognise that figure of £1 million because, of course, that is what Pixel were suggesting, and they were right with Crawley Borough and indeed the county actually. And the LG Futures one was particularly far out. And I did question it previously when we were using the two lots of figures that the LG Futures was not being used by the other Ds and Bs or the county in West Sussex. I was surprised that we were doing so. My next part, Chairman, if I may, is paragraph 6.7, back to fees and charges again, which are rising by 4.8%. So again, like council and social rents, it's 40% higher, if you like, than the current the latest inflation figure. My question relates to last year we had different percentage increases applied across our fees and charges, and some went up by quite a bit. This year it appears we've got this flat figure or this constant figure of 4.8. So my question is, has any work been done to check that increase applied across the board will not have any detrimental impacts on raising revenue within a particular service, because sometimes people may choose not to pay it or not to do something that has that charge. So is anything done to make sure that I don't know if the word is market testing, or I think you know what I'm getting at, to make sure that it's that we're confident that money will be realised simply by putting up the fee, or that actually we don't actually in some cases potentially risk gaining less revenue because suddenly we're pricing ourselves out of the market or what people will actually pay. Thank you, Chairman.
Do you want to? You got a response to that?
I will answer this one,
Okay.
Chair. Yeah, I mean they're all reviewed individually by the service managers who understand the sort of business behind their service. So depending on the magnitude and the level of risk, they might do a mini benchmarking exercise. Where they don't think it's achievable, because I mean, and this is where I always get it wrong, it's either price elasticity or something else. If it's not achievable, then no, they won't do it. But the target is this 4.8%, and they'd have to have a very, very good reason not to go up by 4.8%. And a very good reason would be that, you know, if we're going to lose more income, then obviously it makes absolutely no sense to put your charges up. And that is a difficult one for the managers, but they know their services, and they do the benchmarking as well, if appropriate.
Okay, yeah, just one last quick one. Councillor London.
Does that mean that everything has pretty much gone up by 4.8% this time?
Right. The budget assumes 4.8%, but the actual fees and charges haven't been signed off yet. They go to the individual cabinet members, who then get them presented to them. Then they will be signed off, but the target is 4.8.
Okay, thank you. Councillor London.
Yeah, it's a big document, and the sort of slight changes make it slightly confusing. So some of my questions might be very simple for you to answer, but just because I'm confused. But I mean, overall, obviously, broadly welcome the extra funding from the government. It's possibly the first time in 10 years that we've had a finance officer coming along and not being all doom and gloom about the government's offer. Not saying that we're not doom and gloom about the council's finances, but not all doom and gloom about the government's offer. So that is welcome news. I wanted to start with business rates. I just got a little bit confused maybe in the description of them, because it talks in so I'm trying to find it again now. It talks in earlier in the section on business rates, it talks about how the airport's business rates have gone up almost 300%, and yet when we look at the table on 5.6, our business rates have fallen from last year for 7.5 million to this year to 6.7 million. So I'm just intrigued to see how the airport's business rates have feasibly gone up 300%. We're still receiving less in business rates than we were last year. So if I could just understand that would be good. Second of all, on council tax, understand the reasoning given by the council leader, support that. Obviously, at the last budget, the government also announced that there was going to be new mansion taxes. I wondered if the CBC has looked into whether there are any mansions in Crawley to see whether they're going to be receiving any mansion tax. Does that extra income come to the Borough Council, or does it go elsewhere? Obviously, I welcome taxing that extra money. Then coming on to the difference in fundings in the 2 years, we've got in the table on, let me just give you the table number, table on 6.3, movement in budgets between the 2 years. Basically, we're saying that last year, total cost to run the council was 19 million, and this year the cost to run the council is 21.7 million, which is over 10% increase in running the council, which is quite a lot of money. First of all, the biggest contributor to that seems to be, unsurprisingly, homelessness. In that table, there looks to be some switching between homelessness grant funding and homelessness. I just wondered if you could explain that. But further to that, basically the combination of homelessness grant funding and homelessness difference between the 2 years is just over £2 million in that table in 6.3. But if we then go to temporary accommodation budget in 6.11, it suggests that the estimated outturn this year in total will be 6.3 million. The estimated outturn next year will be 6.9 million. So there's not a 2 million delta there. There's only about a 600,000 delta. So I just wondered on this sort of biggest item, whether you could, what I'm getting wrong to understand why those numbers are different in those two tables. And then I guess the next biggest spend next year that makes a big difference compared to what we're spending this year is the new spending on the food collection, which is £500,000. Obviously, that's a big spend. Not sure we can do anything about that. Just a comment that obviously that is a big increase in our budget to be able to spend that money. I think, like Councillor Crowe, I've probably asked enough for now. So, yeah, any answers on that?
I think there were 4 there.
Thank you, Chair. Never mind 10 years of doom and gloom, Councillor London. I made it more like 15, but I don't remember many good years, that's for certain. Well, that's true, I suppose. We'll forgive you there. But in terms of the council tax or for mansion taxes, we don't get it. I know that much. Caroline will probably have to tell you on the business rates and also the homelessness figures you were asking about. I mean, on the homelessness figures, I think you might be conflating figures that aren't directly linked, but Caroline will probably be better placed. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'll start with the easy one, which is the food waste. The food waste, we were supposed to get new burdens funding for this, and that new burdens funding was rolled into the general grant. So when I was going through the increase on the general grants, which was 3 point something million, I said you needed to take that off. So although we don't get a specific grant for it, we've got more general funding for it. Business rates, okay. This year has been a major year, so we've had a reset and a revaluation, which are not the same thing. The reset resets the old business rates where we've benefited from growth every year, and we've been able to keep 50% of that growth, which has been very welcome. So when we were looking at the budget strategy, we were looking at losing about £2.2 million worth of business rates income because we were going to lose the growth, and it was confirmed the reset was 100%. But in the meantime, we've had a revaluation, and what the revaluation has done, it's redistributed the rateable value of England across the whole of England. So some rateable values have gone up, some have gone down. The airport has shot up. So our rateable value has gone up, which has meant we've gained, but we've lost because of the reset. But we're about £2.2 million better off than we thought because of it. Because when we forecast, we didn't realise what the rateable value was going to be because that's only just been published. I hope I've made that as clear as I can because it did take me quite a while to understand it myself. It's not an easy topic, hence there's quite a lot in the report, and we do have advisors that help us with it. And I think the other question was to do with homelessness. And I think the best thing probably is if I give you another table and I distribute it after this meeting, because I don't think I'm going to be able to explain the sort of the various bits. I mean, what it boils down to is we had grant funding that we've lost because those grants are now ring-fenced, so those are in service, which means that we are now realising those increases in expenditure that we're in the current year being able to net off against those grants. In the meantime, we've also had more general grants because some of that got half the grant, and this is why it's probably better I do your written answer. Half the grant got rolled into the core spending power, and that's why you've got these different figures. But I'll do your table that links it all up. I thought the table under temporary accommodation took care of it, 6.13, but it obviously didn't quite work. So I'll have another attempt of demystifying temporary accommodation funding for you, and I'll have it sent out tomorrow morning.
Councillor Lunn, is that anything you want to follow up?
Mostly you answered that. And I just want to clarify one thing, always my bugbear. The baseline funding, going back to business rates, since the baseline funding level, the tariff set by government, that this year looks like it's roughly, give or take, 6.7%, because we would have had 100 million if we'd kept the 40% retention. But obviously the government goes, you're a high business rate area, we can't let you have all that money, so we're going to cut all that. And obviously we get a cut of 93% down. Is that the same every year, or does it get varied by the government every year? So in effect, what we receive every year is always a mystery to us, because the government will change that amount every year depending on what it decides. Or is that a hard number? That's on table 516, so on the guaranteed baseline funding level. Basically, it's the bit at the bottom where if we had our business rates baseline of 100 million, we'd do very well as a council, but because the government goes, that's clearly far too much for a district council to manage, we're going to massively cut what you actually get, so we only actually get 6.7 million. Roughly we're getting 6.7%. Is that 6.7% every year, or does the government vary it every year anyway?
It's a very, very complicated process. The principles remain the same, but the numbers fluctuate wildly because the numbers involved in business rates are very high. So basically you'll have your baseline, but as businesses change, what we collect changes. So if say Gatwick put an appeal in, it shoots down. We get a few more properties on stream, it goes up. So no, it's not guaranteed. The principles stay the same, but the numbers vary significantly, and they have done ever since the system was brought in.
So just on that point, is it fair to say that broadly we'd always receive around 6.7 million, no matter whether we had a really good year or a really bad year? Or is it magic every year what number we get from our business rates? Because it is a key part of our council's funding if it was actually relatively static.
It fluctuates significantly year on year. For example, if there is a significant appeal, depending on when they appeal, it can go back 3 years. So you have your year of your rating list. If they appeal in year one, you'd only have to reimburse them for 1 year. If they appeal in year two, you reimburse them for 2 years, plus it reduces your baseline because they've appealed. No, it's massively complex, and I think we practitioners call it very volatile.
I think very volatile will be the most generous possible description you could give it. We've got various variables moving there, and then, as you say, you've got the possible appeals factor thrown in as well. Plus, with the other, with homelessness, we've got different grants moving and disappearing, and for some being put in different pots. So, wow. Okay. Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report. Just on paragraph 8.2, there's a reference to an assumed interest rate on investments of 3.29%. I seem to recall that there used to be about 3 advisors in the market for local government who local government could go to for interest rate estimation. Is that still the case? And or is it? And which advisor do we use in terms of reaching that figure, if any? And how pessimistic or optimistic is that compared to the median that we might be supplied with through advice?
I'll take that one, Chair. We use Arling Close as our Treasury advisors. So they would be the ones that will set the predicted levels of interest rate. You asked, is that like the median? They broadly follow the Bank of England interest rate, and where the Bank of England think they will be. I can't remember specifically where it is in comparison to the base rate. If you wanted to know that, then I can go away and get that for you and get that back to you tomorrow. I think have I answered all your questions?
Yep. Thanks for that answer. I mean, were there two other advisors that typically local government refer to? That used to be the case.
Yeah, the other one is Link, which is who we used to be with prior to Arling Close. I'm not aware of a third, personally.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would appreciate the offer of information that you just gave. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, are there any more points or questions for the floor? Okay, Councillor Crowe.
Yes, I did say myself towards the end, Chairman.
I'm just conscious of time as well.
Okay,
yes, go ahead.
I'll be brief, thank you. Page 141, we've got the list of proposed savings. I just want to ask a couple of questions about a couple of them. So the third one down, which is quite small in the scheme of things, 14.243 thousand, is a move to card and electronic payments at Town Hall and Orchard Street. I presume that means the car parks at both of those locations. And if we are moving away from not having cash payments at those car parks, well, are we looking at any more while we're at it? The obvious one that springs to my mind is Tilgate Park, but we've also got the I've never used that Kingsgate car park, so I'm not sure if that takes cash or not, but definitely at Tilgate Park I know, because I pay my £3 in cash there. So there's a question there. Then lower down we've got maintenance of the bowls lawns handed over to relevant clubs, and last year it was worded slightly differently in terms of removal of the provision of specialist maintenance to croquet, the croquet club and the bowls club. So it's slightly changed there. So my question there is, what engagement has been undertaken with the bowls clubs and the croquet club to enable them to adequately manage their own maintenance? And then my third question relates to, and final, relates to the garage maintenance budget, which is is the biggest one in there, 300,000. So this is looking at a capital bid instead of taking it from revenue, but it's still a reduction of saving of £300,000. And I don't know how many members here have gone around their wards and looked at the state and the condition of the garage blocks in their wards, and I can't imagine that if you have, many of you would be that impressed, quite frankly, with the condition, which feels like investment in just to make them half decent looking, and plain they've got holes in roofs or what have you, is long overdue. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, there's three quick points there, I think. Did we capture them?
I'll cover them as best I can, Chair, but if any of the officers feel that they want to add, they can do. As far as the car parks are concerned, yes, it is only the two car parks that you've mentioned that have been identified at the moment, I believe. We're not removing the facilities to pay cash anywhere else that I'm aware of. The Tilgate ones, for example, will continue until they reach the end of their useful lives, which I've not been informed of as any time soon. I've been told that we've been able to reach an agreement with the Bowls Club and the Croquet Club. The Deputy Chief Exec might well be able to give you more detail on that, but I think if we have, that's very positive, and it vindicates this council's decision last year to provide funding for a further year, to give the clubs a chance to get into a position where this could be taken forward. And with the garages, I think I might look to the officers for a bit more on this, but it is just a question of striking the right balance and reaching a judgment as to where the investment needs to go in terms of our capital programme, really. And I take the point that some of our garages have seen better days, but there should remain budget within that to deal with that adequately. Thank you.
Are you going to pick up on the bowls and the garages?
Yep, I can pick up on that. On the bowls and croquet, yes, we've engaged with both the bowls clubs and the croquet club, and come to an agreement where yes, the saving was that we would cease to manage them. And they both came to us with proposals to say they would take over the management themselves, and we've worked with them over the last year to ensure that's viable and what they're proposing works, and we've come to an agreement where they will take over the management themselves. And there's a few things we've done to help them with that. So we've installed a tap on one of them, so they've got access to water, and we've done some things to help them. But effectively, they'll take that over, and we're just in the final stages now of agreeing that with them and getting the sort of contracts done. But yes, that I think is a really good outcome for them, and we've been able to make the saving on that. The garages, I looked. Caroline might know. I think it's historically money that we underspend, but Caroline will probably answer better than me on that.
Yes, I mean, historically it's been underspent because it is supposed to be a repairs and maintenance budget, and as the sort of description sort of points you in the direction of we are looking for a sort of capital bid in 27-28 when we've got the information from the stock condition survey, because that is the piece of information that's missing. And I think it got a bit delayed because of the housing inspection and having to do the sort of HRA stock condition surveys, which are a priority, but we do need that information, and then they can have a proper program. Because if you're saying that roofs need repairing, that shouldn't just be a patch. That's a sort of a proper capital program.
Very briefly, can I thank the leader and both officers for their answers. I will also claim some credit for the deferral to defer the savings for the bowls and the croquet club, and very much welcome what Chris Page has told us about having come to an arrangement. I will just make a final point that about the garages and the what is a saving, and you're waiting for a stock condition survey. I'll just point out that we have increased their charges by quite a lot, and in fact we did increase them mid-year about a year and a half ago, so they are paying a lot more. So I very much welcome or look forward to seeing some investment in our garage blocks, because it feels like I've not seen very much over recent years. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay, brilliant. Are there any other questions or points from the floor? I think we've had a very detailed and thorough discussion on that, and I thank officers for the additional information explanations that they've given us during the course of the meeting. I believe, Caroline, you were going to write a brief piece on the homelessness and fantastic. Okay, if there are no further points to the floor, I move that the Commission notes the report and requests the views expressed during this debate are fed back to the Cabinet through the Commission's comment sheet. Could I have a seconder? Okay, Olu, thank you. Is that agreed? Agreed. The recommendations are agreed. So we now move on to the capital strategy, and again we have a report from Councillor Jones and possibly Caroline and Gary.
Thank you, Chair. The capital strategy 26-27. This report presents that for 26-27. The strategy outlines how capital expenditure, financing and treasury management support the corporate priorities of the council and service delivery. It sets out governance for assessing and approving capital investment in line with the SIP for Prudential Code and Treasury Management Code. The strategy broadly follows the current approved strategy, with the additions that it references a specific asset disposal strategy which will come to Cabinet in due course. The strategy puts a governance framework around all parts of capital decision considerations and is detailed in the appendix. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, are there any additional comments before I put this over to the floor? Okay, are there any questions or points to be raised from councillors on this? Anything that wishes to be... Councillor Lunnan.
I was just looking at the asset disposal strategy because I think that's the new bit of this policy. And the question I had was on other council assets. And what we don't seem to do is have whereas on land and buildings we have a sort of set limit of £50,000, where if it's above £50,000 it's goes through a certain process, and if it's under £50,000, it's sort of a less onerous process. But we don't have that limit on the non-land and buildings items. Now, that might seem, because it's very rare that we have any other council assets that don't have that value, but at the same time, those lower value items can also sometimes be used, can sometimes add up if there's more than one of them. So I just wondered whether that other council assets area might need a bit of beefing up to actually put some hard rules in on that.
Okay, do we have a comment or a response?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, we're more than happy to look at adding some. I mean, at this point in the strategy, this describes what we're doing now. So yes, we can add that to the work programme if the committee so wishes.
Do we feel, Councillor Lunn, would you feel that an appropriate addition?
I mean, they can add it to their strategy at their leisure. I don't particularly want them to come up with the new rules on the hoof. That's not a good policy in itself. So just to be considered maybe for next year's strategy and fit it in accordingly rather than try and amend it now. I think that's probably a bit unwise at this point.
Okay, Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I looked very carefully at the strategy and there wasn't anything in it that I considered necessary to add, but if members do wish to add anything, then now is the perfect time to say it. But obviously we can review it for next year as well, and I'll ask the officers if they can give that some thought. Thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions on this? I think it was largely a statement of policy and practice and processes. Any other questions from the floor? No? Okay. Then I'll say thank you for the report, and all committee members have had the opportunity to speak. So I move that the Commission notes the report and requests the views are fed back during the debate to the Cabinet through the Commission's comment sheet. Could I please have a seconder? Thank you. Councillor Evermosa. Is that agreed? Agreed. Okay. So the recommendations agreed. We now move on to the Treasury Management Strategy. And I believe, again, that's Councillor Jones, Caroline and Kerry.
Thank you, Chair. The report sets out the Council's proposed Treasury Management Strategy for 26-27. It covers both the General Fund and Housing Revenue Account. It outlines how the Council will manage cash, investments and borrowing across the organisation as a corporate approach to Treasury management. Local authorities have to approve an annual Treasury Management strategy under SIPFA's Code of Practice for Treasury Management, and the detailed strategy is in Appendix A. The aims of Treasury Management are to ensure cash is available when needed, surplus cash is invested in low-risk counterparties, along with ensuring funding is in place for the Council's capital plans. Security of sums invested is top priority over liquidity and yield. The strategy includes a range of prudential indicators which have been updated to reflect the 26-27 budget and capital programme. The strategy follows the current approved strategy with the addition of a set of Treasury management practices, TMPs, to put further governance and support robust due diligence around Treasury management activity. These are detailed in Appendix B. And I'm sure that the officers will be delighted to answer any of your questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Then I'll open this to members. Do we have any questions or comments or observations from the floor? Looking to my left, ironically.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for introducing the report. My views on the so-called ethical policy are well known, and I don't propose to go over it again, except to say that obviously I don't support it. But if I didn't mention that, then it might be taken that I do support it. But I'm not going to make a big deal out of it this time. But you know my views. I just like to draw members' attention to the page 196. It says paragraph 2.3.2, commercial investment property, and I note they all seem to have gone down in, apart from the other which doesn't state what that is. They all seem to have gone down in value, and Ashdown House quite considerably, over a quarter. So I just wonder if there's any comment or as to why that they seem to have pretty much gone down in value as they're marked for their fair value across the board.
Would that be... Who would like to speak to the revaluations?
Yep, I'll take that one, Chair. Generally, they will be based on rental values as investment properties. You specifically mentioned Ashdown House. I think you're probably aware of the problems we have at Ashdown House, and so therefore the valuation reflects the fact that at the moment we can't get any rental money for Ashdown House. So that's why the value of that one has dropped significantly. As for the rest, yeah, it's just general rents, and it also includes land value, and land values generally went down at the end of last year, which has contributed to the decrease in valuations.
Any response or questions?
Well, thank you. So am I right in thinking that therefore that commercial rents overall are going down, or is it our ability to actually to let the space that's making a difference? Earlier this evening we talked about social rents and indeed private rents going up, but are commercial rents going in the opposite direction, or is it that we've not been able to rent as much space as what we'd like to be able to?
Thank you, Chair. I was saying that is quite a tricky question, because obviously commercial rents do sort of vary across the country, and I wish Richard Gammy was here to answer this question. I mean, obviously, if you've got tenants in, then you're fine, because they're locked into a certain rent structure, and they usually have rent reviews, and they tend to go up. It's more of a properties remaining empty. But I mean, as we sort of see with the crate building, if you've got the right if you've got the right offer, if you get the demand, you'll get the right rent. It's a combination of the two, I would say. But please do check with Richard Gammy, because he's our expert.
Sorry, Councillor Crowe, were you?
That's fine.
You're okay with that? So it is a combination of getting bums on seats, but I suppose with an office that's effectively what it is, isn't it? So, yeah. Okay. Are there any other questions or observations from the floor? No, not at this stage. Okay. Well, thank you for the answers that we've had. Are we suggesting that Richard Gammy might be able to provide some flesh on the bones to the question, or Caroline? Would so that specific issue about the devaluations on the investment properties? Yeah. Yep. Go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. I think there's two dimensions to it. I mean, there's the reduced valuations, but on the other hand, they're listed as losses, but they're unrealised losses, and we don't have to realise the losses. I mean, that's quite an important point, I think. It would be more serious if one had to dispose and realise a loss, but we're not in that position. But I think it's still interesting to understand the reasoning behind it. But more importantly, I think the rents and by the way, I think some of us as councillors have a role in different forums in which we participate, and I do this just to commend the Create building to prospective tenants, because we all meet in a lot of forums. What's the harm in advertising the Create building to potential renters?
Absolutely. Okay. Don't think there are any further comments or questions. So, again, thank you for the report and the answers that we've received. So all committee members have had the opportunity to speak, so I thank for the report and move that the Commission notes the report and request the views expressed during the debate are fed back. I think we're going to get a little bit of additional information on the devaluation of assets. So those will be fed back through the Cabinet through the Commission's comment sheet. Could I have a seconder? Who had, okay, Ollie, is that agreed? Agreed. Okay, brilliant. So we now move on to the forthcoming decision list, and this is featured on your agenda, which I believe is page 3 of the original papers that came out. So the forthcoming decision list is featured and is also on the Council's website. So I'll ask Heather to now list those that have been referred, and then members can look at the others.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. There have been some changes to your published agenda, so I'll go through these very quickly. Firstly, just to inform the Commission that you are due to receive the following items at the meeting in March. These have been previously agreed. So you are due to receive the Corporate Peer Review Update Report, Armed Forces, Support for Armed Forces Review Report, Climate Change Action Plan. That's the annual update, and that needs to come in March because it's due this year. And also it's been agreed to receive the Cabinet Member discussion for environment, sustainability and climate change because they're due to attend for climate change. So those are the 4 that are already coming to OSC. In addition, there are currently 8 reports heading to Cabinet, which I will now list. So there's Crawley Homes Pets Policy, Crawley Homes Mutual Exchange Policy, Provider Improvement Strategy and Action Plan, Approval of Section 106 Monies for Education, Economic and Placemaking Vision Strategy for Crawley, Community Infrastructure Levy Strategic Infrastructure Strand Review, Goss Park House and delivery of TA and HRA acquisition programmes. So bearing in mind you already have 4 items coming to OSC, do you wish to refer any of the other 8? And can I just remind the Commission of some of the criteria to be used when you refer? So you need to think about, will the Commission add value? Will you influence the debate? Is it a good use of resources? And will an informal discussion with the report author resolve any issues? And would you like a provisional or full referral? Thank you.
Councillor Lunnon.
Could you just go over which ones have changed again from the published agenda? I think it was item 8, but was it also item 7?
Okay, so changes from the published agenda. Cleaning policy has been deferred. Okay. And leisure contract deed of variation has been deferred.
What are the additional ones? Sorry.
Goss Park House and delivery of TA and HRA acquisition programme.
So not the armed forces?
That was already coming to OSC.
Oh yeah, that's already on the remembrance.
So there's 4 that are specific to OSC and are already coming. So it's corporate peer review update, support for armed forces, climate change and your Cabinet Member discussion, which you specifically requested.
Councillor Lanza.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of comments. We're using some terms interchangeably, aren't we, on Remembrance Review Report and are we? I think.
It is. It's the report is actually support for armed forces, but
okay,
yeah, it was.
We can just.
It basically changed last week.
Oh, all right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
No, but one I'd like to include, because it doesn't get much more strategic than this, really, is number 6, an economic and placemaking vision strategy for Crawley 2026 to 2040. Obviously, there's an element of handover in that report. An element, I'm understating, quite a big chunk of handover actually. But I think it's sufficiently strategic to warrant consideration by the Commission.
Councillor London, did you want to speak to that, or did you have another possible addition?
Both.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree with that. The two that are quite interesting to me are the SIL Strategic Infrastructure Strand Review, because that sounds very bland, but usually is directing money towards specific important projects. So I'd like to know about that, and then the Goss Park House one as well. All the rest I'm not too fussed about.
I mean, the SIL report has come to Cabinet on quite a few times. What I will say, it's rarely come to OSC.
Well, all the better reason.
Thank you, Chairman. I would support Councillor Lanza's comments regarding item 6 and about the importance of having that item on the agenda. But that will then give us 5 items. And remember that I think the corporate peer review update report is quite an important one, as indeed is the climate change action plan update. I think we'll have enough on our agenda. And I look at the agenda that we had tonight, and it was quite substantive. We've nearly got through it in 2 hours, but only 3 of us have actually contributed. And actually, if more of us did, we would be here much longer. So I'm just conscious that if we end up putting too much on the agenda, people will you might get me contributing less, but people might feel put off by contributing just to try and get through the agenda. So I think there needs to be a balance to be struck here. So I think Councillor London asked for, was it Goffs Park House? I suppose I could support that if it was sort of a fairly brief item. But other than that, we could be in for a long evening if we start doing some of these items justice. So I would just caution against putting too much on there. Thank you, Chairman. And I might stick around for that one. I was planning to take myself off, but as we've only got one more for the year and I've had so much fun tonight, I might just stay for one more meeting to see out the council year.
So, Councillor Lanza, you've said economic placement and strategy, and I think there's an agreement on that number. Is that 5? Am I correct with that?
Yeah, that would make it 5.
Yeah, that's
number 6. It's number 6.
Oh, it's right. It's number 6 you want. Okay. Yes. Okay. Right. And Councillor London, your views, please, and others, please contribute.
I wanted number 7 and non-number because Goffs Park isn't on the list at the moment.
Councillor Lunnon wanted SIL and Goffs Park House.
Yeah.
Originally. So there's a discussion,
That's
there's
quite
an
light
agreement
for me,
from you,
Duncan.
Chair, as to whether you want SIL and Goffs Park.
Well, it's at the thought for members. It's not for me to direct on that. I mean, I am conscious though that there were 200 pages to read for this to go through. So, okay, Councillor Crowe, if you have a.
Okay. Yeah, use that. They're both now working. That's fine. But let's have a vote. And I propose that we do not put the SIL on the agenda. Let's have a vote on that. I just think, especially if it's going to be a huge report, and I'm not sure the value that's going to be added. It is going to cabinet, and I'm not sure what interest there will. There's only Councillor London who's actually expressed any interest on it.
Okay, we've got a proposition. We don't put. Sorry.
We have voted for and against.
Oh, for putting it on.
Yeah, for and then against.
Okay, and this is for the.
SIL.
SIL.
Community infrastructure levy.
Okay, so all those in favour of having the community infrastructure levy on the next agenda, please raise your hand. Okay, 3. All those against? 2. And abstentions? 4. Sorry? I don't see I need to. We've got it. I could abstain. I'm going to vote for it. So for it to be on. So yes. So change the numbers. Yeah.
Can we have a vote for?
Okay. All those for on the agenda. Yeah. And those against? And those abstaining? Sorry if I've confused people, so it's 3, 4. Okay. All right.
It's going on.
You got there?
Yeah.
So it's going on. Okay.
And Goffs Park.
And Goffs, all right, do we have a decision on Goffs Park? Do we want?
Yeah, fine.
So we're not going ahead with Goffs Park,
Yeah.
okay.
We
are, okay. So it is a suicide pact then. Right. Okay, okay, and apologies if I confused things slightly there. Right, so we're now on to exempt information, so we will come to part B, the exempt report, and this is the confidential section of the meeting. So under Section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the public be excluded from the meeting. The following item of business on the grounds that involves the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act by virtue of the paragraph specified against the item. The recording and live stream will now finish, and I would like to thank anybody here who has been watching. Thank you very much.